was, etc., out of the 4 people. However, in 2018, there was a trove of documents dumped online from the hacker group Dark Overlord. And in one of the lawsuits from one of the 9/11 widows, he actually took the stand. And he named that Atta was, in fact, one of them. I believe the other one was supposedly the lead hijacker of 175, Nawaf al-Hamzi. They weren't supposed to be in the same unit. Now, what's really alarming about all of this is the FBI knew. Seymour Hersh, in his testimony, said that he had confirmed that the FBI had taken it seriously prior. By the way, they showed up to his door after he contacted them on the morning of 9/11 and let him know that he was on this flight. So we had all these reports, and again, it seemed like Atta was protected. Again, in the film Fabled Enemies, I showed that Deborah Albritton had called the CIA on her neighbor, who was one of the hijackers, and they did nothing there as well. This seems to be the norm again and again and again, that at least some of these people were protected at the highest levels. The al-Bayoumi story has now gotten out there into the mainstream, but this wasn't really new. It's, again, something I reported on.
It's been confirmed to me through FBI friends at the highest level that two of the terrorists at 9/11 were on the CIA payroll. 2 of them. So on the U.S. CIA payroll.
Again, when you look at that norm again and again and again, that at least some of these people were protected at the highest levels. The al-Bayoumi story has now gotten out there into the mainstream, but this wasn't really new. It's, again, something I reported on.
It's been confirmed to me through FBI friends at the highest level that two of the terrorists at 9/11 were on the CIA payroll. 2 of them. So on the U.S. CIA payroll.
Again, when you look at that, you know, you've had people like Richard Clark come out, talk about the bin Laden stories. There's a lot more connections. Show that Deborah Albritton had called the CIA on her neighbor, who was one of the hijackers, and they did nothing there as well. This seems to be the norm again and again and again, that at least some of these people were protected at the highest levels. The al-Bayoumi story has now gotten out there into the mainstream, but this wasn't really new. It's, again, something I reported on.
It's been confirmed to me through FBI friends at the highest level that two of the terrorists at 9/11 were on the CIA payroll. 2 of them. So on the U.S. CIA payroll.
Again, when you look at that, you know, you've had people like Richard Clark come out, talk about al-Bayoumi. We certainly have the Saudi funding. If you believe the bin Laden stories, there's a lot more connections to Pakistan than there are on the named places of war on terror, Afghanistan, Iraq, etc. Especially when you talk about the funding prior to 9/11 with General Mahmoud Ahmed out of the ISI. And when you talk about the Central Intelligence Agency, the ISI, the CIA, MI6, they've kind of worked hand in hand since the 70s. I also put that in there. And the Mujahideen bin Laden network in Russia. So you talk about a commission. What can we expect? You know, after your firebrand interview on Jimmy Dore, which I suggest everybody go check out, Anthony Schaefer actually posted on his social media that there would be more coming regarding not only Able Danger, but other disclosures regarding U.S. government wrongdoing. What do you think those disclosures will be? What is the process? And again, with 9/11 in particular, look, I want the assassination stuff. I know people are fever-driven about the Epstein stuff, all stuff I've covered in the last 20-plus years of me doing this, and I think it's important. 9/11's the crux. It really is.
Yeah, I agree with that, because it really kind of kicked things. I saw this begin to happen in the 90s. It happened under the Clintons. And I was on the Cox Commission that was established by the Congress to investigate what they alleged was China theft of technology from the U.S. I was one of 9. I was the only non-committee chairman on the commission. We met behind closed doors for 6 months. Our report was 9-0. Our security was severely harmed. It wasn't stolen. Our technology was auctioned off by the Clinton administration. The Chinese.
And hold on, are you talking about the Promise and Carnivore software, the scandals with, say, Robert Maxwell selling that off?
All the scandals involving, and I have charts on this that I can show you, in the 90s, the Clinton administration, in 1 year alone, 1996, they allowed 4 Chinese nationals who were raising funds for the Clinton-Gore campaign, the Democratic National Party, to get entrance into the White House 60 times. John Wang, James Riotti, they all got into the White House. You couldn't get in the White House 60 times. They did. The charts show the linkages where Chinese front companies were used to establish networks to use campaign funds to basically get access to our technology. I gave you the story of Bernie Schwartz and L'Oreal Corporation, where Sandy Berger arranged a retroactive presidential waiver. There were waivers given for violations of arms control agreements. There were waivers given for transfers of technology. All that started in the 90s. And I couldn't even rely on the intelligence agency for information that I felt was reliable. And I was the vice chairman of the committee. So I formed my own intel team. There's a group in Washington that members had staffers attend called the Cockroaches. And they were basically a lot of ex-military people who worked for the CIA, DIA, NSA, FBI. They would meet like for drinks or have dinner. And I got to know a lot of them. And they were very loyal, patriotic Americans. And they were also very concerned about the spin being placed on U.S. intelligence to the Congress from the agency. So I established a loose-knit team of about 20 that would come and meet with me for breakfast in the members' dining room of the Capitol once a week. And they would feed me raw data. Then I would use that raw data to go to classified briefings and ask questions of the CIA and see what their response was. They're not knowing where I'm getting my information from. That's how I found out about bin Laden. I mean, I wasn't like I had some, magical capability. I got it from people that were getting it from our raw data that was coming to our agencies that wasn't being given to the Congress. And that's another whole story I'll talk to you about on this show, is how I know where bin Laden was after 9/11. He wasn't in Afghanistan. He was not there. And the U.S. placed him where they placed him and arranged it, which was in Iran. He was in Baluchistan. He was allowed to roam in Baluchistan, and the quid pro quo was he could stay there as long as Al-Qaeda didn't attack the U.S. on our soil. And that deal wasn't cut with the Iranian government, wasn't cut with Ahmadinejad. The deal was cut with Soleimani and the IRG. And the ties between the IRG and our intelligence agencies are obvious. When the Shah was in power, the U.S. and Iran were good friends. The people, we trained their intelligence agencies. Well, when the Shah left, the intelligence agency in Iran didn't change. They stayed the same. So this connection stayed the same. And what I'm telling you is, and I have the 10 silver bullets to verify this and prove this, the U.S. facilitated the placement of Osama bin Laden in Iran, in Baluchistan, post 9/11.
So can I just get a timeline there? Because there is that January 2002 report from CBS and Dan Rather, where they go to the hospital in Rawalpindi, Pakistan, and actually talk to some of the staff. And they claim that Osama bin Laden is there on the eve of 9/11, 9/10, getting dialysis and being protected by the Pakistani military. Do you believe that could be the case? And then in short order, they cut deals to bring him to Iran?
I don't know the exact timeline of his placement. I can tell you this. Sometime after 9/11, and I started, because of my absolute outrage over what happened at 9/11 and the fact that we could have prevented that, which, by the way, Louis Freeh wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal supporting me, and he also went on Good Morning America saying that 9/11 Commission did not do its job because they tried to blame him because he had left the FBI in like 2000. But I got raw intelligence fed to me that bin Laden was in a town called Ladiz. I didn't know where Ladiz was, so I walked up the street in Pennsylvania Avenue one evening and I bought a map. I came back and I found Ladiz 10 kilometers inside the border of Pakistan in Iran, in Baluchistan. So I went to the classified briefing for the full committee. I was the acting chairman, 50 members of the committee. We're in a classified setting, and I said, I have information that bin Laden's been sighted in a town called Ladiz. And the response to me was, Mr. Chairman, we've heard similar reports. We can either confirm or deny them. No denial. We've heard similar reports. 3 months later, I get raw intelligence that he's being treated at a military hospital outside of Tehran. I go back and I ask the question. I get the same response. We've heard similar reports. We can either confirm or deny them. Then I get, and this is all taking place probably 2002 in that time frame, I get a request from the Interior Department that they wanted, that the #1 falconer in the world, head of the Falcon Association, wants to meet with me. So I didn't think that was unusual because I was a Republican member of the House on the Migratory Bird Commission that oversees our flyways. John Dingell was a Democrat, 2 senators and 3 cabinet members. I said, okay, bring him in. So this resident of Maine, U.S. citizen, who's a Sikh, comes into my office. He's a very wealthy family. He's got 2 falcons on his shoulders, $1 million birds. So, boy, they're beautiful birds. How can I help you? He said, well, Congressman, I'm from a wealthy family. I've headed up the International Falconry Association my whole life, and I've worked to protect falcons through the UN and the UN Falconry Protection Agreements. And he said, I worked in all the base camps of all the royal families in the Middle East. He said, I trained their children in the sport of falconry. And he said, so I well received throughout the U.S. And I said, okay, what do you need me to do? He said, I need you to help me get to Iran. I said, why do you want to go to Iran? He said, that's where bin Laden is. I said, why would you say that? He said, my falconers are seeing bin Laden's birds flying in Iran. And Iran will accept me because I travel there a lot. You help me get there. I'll tag his birds, and I'll take the U.S. exactly to where he is. Now, that he knew nothing about my briefings. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but I'm in the middle of another big battle right now. I can't get you into Iran.
And what year is this taking place?
Well, they wanted to do a film with me after I was taken out of Congress. He came back to me, and he was working with Michael Scheuer. Michael was the CIA Bin Laden Task Force Director.
So are we talking around 2007, 8-ish?
No. This is when I was in Congress. No,
you're still in Congress.
All this happened when I was in Congress.
So is this prior to the Iraq invasion or post-Iraq?
Oh, yeah. This would have all been in the range of 2002, 3, 4, in that range. Okay. All in that time. All when I was in Congress.
Congressman, we got to take one final break. This is riveting. You're hearing a lot of stuff you're not going to hear in the mainstream for the first time. Final segment of the show after this. Hey, everybody. Jason Burmis here, and it's with somewhat of a heavy heart. Jason, I have left the cursory information surrounding bin Laden. Number one, he's not just a royal billionaire. He's somebody whose family has also been in business with families like the Bushes for a very, very long time. And as I alluded to before, that Mujahideen Muslim Brotherhood network worked with U.S. intelligence and the Brzezinskis of the world when Russia was the big enemy. Rambo 3. They were the freedom fighters, folks. It wasn't until almost the post-Russia hype, when Russia was acceptable, that the new threat was this Middle Eastern terrorism that we started to see pop up. So what are your thoughts on bin Laden? Because there is a lot of spooky stuff out there. In fact, there is documentation out there. I think Ted Gunderson's the one who put it out years ago, that supposedly when he was a CIA asset, coming to the United States, his name was Tim Osman. Is that real? And again, what are your thoughts on this guy?
Okay, I can't verify that. The things I'm telling you, I can verify every one of them. I've given you 3. I have 10 silver bullets about bin Laden. The 4th one is actually from a Democrat. The most respected Democrat in the House when I served was Jack Murtha, who was the chairman of Defense Appropriations from Pittsburgh. And he worked with me regularly, especially to do investigations, because I'm a meticulous person for detail. And he sent over Ron Klink. Ron Klink is still alive. He was a KDKA TV producer, TV star in Pittsburgh. And he said, go to Kurt, because Ron had information about Iran and some sources that he wanted investigated. And he said, Kurt will do an investigation. So Ron came over and told me about a person that came to him with information about Iran. I said, okay, have the guy come in. So the guy came in from the Midwest. I still have his contact information. Tall, 6'5" guy. And he said, I was a knock for the agency. A knock is a person that works for the agency that they will never acknowledge work for the agency. And he said, I said, well, look, how can I help you? He said, well, Congressman, he said, I asked Congressman Klink to help me, and I'm now coming to you because he steered me to you. He said, I wanted you to help me get into Iran. I said, why do you want to go to Iran? He said, well, that's where bin Laden is. I said, well, why would you say that? He said, because I worked that part of the world for the agency. And he said, I know that's where he is. He said, and I know there's a $25 million reward. And he said, if you help me get into Tehran, I'll leave my ID there, and I'll bring back bin Laden either dead or alive. I said, well, that's the 4th silver bullet I have. I told you that the head of the bin Laden task force in the CIA, Michael Scheuer, and General McInerney both called me. They wanted to do a film with me after I left Congress about this whole story. Then I have sources from 2 royal families that I was close to. And I asked them the specific question, and both of them acknowledged to me that they knew that bin Laden was in Iran. Then I have the ultimate source, the U.S. asset that was in the room when the deal was cut. The deal was not cut with Ahmadinejad. The deal was cut with Soleimani. A deal was cut with Soleimani, the head of the IRG. The Iranian government knew nothing about it, to place bin Laden in Baluchistan, to roam there. When Ahmadinejad found out that he was in Iran, that's when they kicked him over to Pakistan and got him out of the country. And actually, the Falconer from Maine was going up to the UN office of the Iran, because they had no embassy here. And he was constantly pestering them about, why are you harboring bin Laden? And they would say, you're crazy. We would never have that man in our country. But they would constantly go back and say, hey, this is being asked of us. Ahmadinejad came over to give a speech at the UN. And George Stephanopoulos, you know who he is, the Birdman, got him to ask the question kind of jokingly, hey, we understand that you're harboring bin Laden. And Ahmadinejad went back to Iran. And that's when they found out that was where he was and kicked him over to Pakistan. And the rest is history. Do I think bin Laden was there? Absolutely 100%. Do I think the was a cover-up? Absolutely 100%. Do I think our agency was involved? 100%. Do I think anyone's willing to take on and investigate? No. And that's the problem. I would not come out and speak, because the Bush administration, Bush Sr. was a big supporter of mine. In fact, when I wrote my book, Taking on the CIA in 2005, I don't know whether you're aware of it or not, but I wrote this book, Countdown to Terror, about Iran, Taking on the CIA. Jim Woolsey endorsed that book, and he was former CIA director. And I said, if we don't come to understand the problem with Iran, we're going to end up with a war with them. So the problem is that we've not had the members of Congress who have the protection to ask the tough questions. And the agency would rather have members fight with each other over stupid things and yell at each other than really worry about the serious things affecting our country. And to be honest with you, I couldn't trust anything under Obama. And I couldn't trust, and even though I know Joe Biden very well and grew up in the town next to him, and he came to my son's funeral as vice president and stood in line for an hour, I knew that the people under Joe, he couldn't control. With Trump, when he got rid of the security clearances for the 51, it's a different story. Now, I would tell you, the biggest risk for Trump right now is his personal safety. They're not going to lay down easily. These people, and they have tentacles all over. I don't care who knows. I know what they did to me. They took on my family for no reason. And that's not America. I never wished, and I don't have any big money, and I can name you CIA former employees who are filthy rich, who have big bank accounts, who made tons of money. The Clintons, who are scumbags, who made tons of money. That's the problem with America. 200 years ago, we had patriots that got their guns out and fought against oppression. Now it's time for patriots to stand up and use their voices, to speak out. And if we don't do that, we have no one to blame but ourselves. These little cliques of control that think they can manipulate and not be held accountable, that kill people. I watched the film, being a firefighter, I watched the film that was put out in 2020 by firefighters called Bravo 7, that has the voice of one of the most respected battalion chiefs in New York, Oriole Palmer, 3 kids. He goes into the tower, takes the elevator, got the elevator working up to the 40th floor with his unit, gets off the elevator, climbs 38 floors up the stair tower, gets out of the stair tower, arrives on the floor where the plane hit. And you can hear him say as clear as day, I'm here, my crew's here. We've got 2 fires, we can handle them. A minute later, the building collapses. That's not America. I'm a fire chief. That didn't happen by accident. A firefighter, a battalion chief doesn't arrive on the 78th floor and say, I've got the fire where I can handle it. And this tower collapses.
Congressman Weldon, we could do another hour on that subject matter alone. This has been a pleasure. I wish I had more time with you. I want everybody